foreign investors have purchased about 1,800 established properties in any given year. Now, we know that in the 2023-24 financial year, there were about 5,600 transfers of established properties from one Australian to another. So this represents 0.3% of the volume of transactions in established housing. In other words, as Minister O'Neill says, it will reduce the demand from those for established homes, thus creating opportunities for up to 2,000 Australians to buy homes who might otherwise not have been able to. But it's pretty small beer in the grand scheme of things. There may be more significance attached to the government's proposal to ban temporary residents in Australia, people on temporary visas and the like, from purchasing established properties. Now, we know from the 2021 census that there were about 1.6 million people living in Australia on temporary visas. What we don't know is how many of them are buying established properties. I suspect it's not very much, but it's probably more than the number of foreign investors who are buying established properties. So that may also work to reduce the competition that aspiring Australian first home buyers face in seeking to realise their dreams, to get that first foot on the housing ladder.
Okay, so I'm getting the feeling that it won't have a huge impact on fixing housing affordability. So Saul, similar kinds of policies have been introduced by governments in other countries. Do you think they've been effective when it comes to improving housing affordability?
Well, it's not obvious that they have been. There are some countries like China, for example, which completely ban foreigners and non-citizens from purchasing housing or land in China under any circumstances. If you look at countries that, like Australia, do attract lots of foreign investment and lots of migrants from overseas, such as Canada and New Zealand, their housing affordability problems are almost as bad, or in Canada's case, worse than ours, and they have had some restrictions on foreigners buying residential property in those countries for some time. So if they have an impact at all, the impact is likely to be at the margin. As Minister O'Neill said, this is not a silver bullet. It's certainly not that. I describe it as more cosmetic than substantive, but it, from the government's point of view, neutralises the contest with the opposition over that particular aspect of housing policy.
So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. So if politicians were serious about fixing the housing affordability crisis and looking beyond just cosmetic measures, the policies they'd need to announce wouldn't exactly win them an election, would they?
Well, no, and that's the point. I mean, I've said in this context before that if the government was serious about reducing the competition that would-be first home buyers face in seeking to realise their dreams, they might want to reduce the number of properties, that established properties in particular, that are bought by Australian investors as distinct from foreign investors. Now, we know that in the 2023-24 financial year, banks and other lenders made finance commitments to over 140,000 Australian investors to purchase established homes, whereas foreign investors, when they buy homes, only about 30% of them are purchasers of established homes. Most of them are purchasers of new homes, which at least adds to the supply of housing, whether for rent or for ownership, whereas close to 80% in 2023-24 of domestic investors bought established properties, that is, properties that already exist as opposed to new ones. And although they like to say to themselves and to others that by purchasing established properties, they're adding to the supply of housing, what they're also doing at exactly the same time is increasing the demand for rental housing by outbidding would-be home buyers who'd be living in it themselves. But of course, both sides of politics know, and especially the Labor Party after the 2019 election, that there are between 2 and 3 million Australian voters who already own at least one investment property, and they'd probably be, that's more of them who'd be annoyed by having, for example, their tax breaks reduced or eliminated altogether, whereas in any given year there are only about 100,000 Australians who succeed in becoming first home buyers. So there's a pretty clear imbalance of votes in favour of allowing Australian investors to continue to outbid aspiring home buyers, and not too many votes in the other direction. Politicians don't usually say that in public, but they certainly know it.